Britt Moore, calling to order the December 15th meeting of the Finance Committee here at City Hall in High Point. And for those of you live streaming as well, with me today is Mayor Pro Tem Monica Peters and Councilman Michael Holmes. Sorry, Michael. Trying to get my papers together here. We will jump right into our agenda. Doesn't look to be very long. And we'll start with item 2022-585. Robbie Stone will be presenting some information from Brentwood Industries.
Thank you. So this is to purchase tube settlers for our super pulsator out at the Ward Water Treatment Plant. These were installed as part of the 1996 upgrade at the plant, and these settlers have currently 26 years old, and they basically exceeded their useful life. We intend to hire a contractor to install these new tube settlers. We do have funding in our current budget for this. We're recommending that we award this to Brentwood Industries in the amount of $197,933.
Thank you. Is there any comments or questions for Robbie? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-585. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman
Oh, wait,
Holmes?
do you need, you don't need a second, do you?
Yeah. Did we not get, thank you.
Okay, second, sorry.
On the roll here.
Okay.
All right, well, let's start from that again.
Okay.
How do you vote?
Aye.
All right, Councilman Holmes, how do you
Aye.
vote? Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-588, Tyler Barrier of our electric utilities. We'll talk about a Westco distribution contract.
Hey, good afternoon. This is for the purchase of some 40 residential style units. These don't have a specific project they'll be utilized, but as we get projects come through TRC, we order materials accordingly. So this is to purchase 20 50 kVA units and 20 75 kVA units for just general use.
Stock and inventory.
That's right.
Comments or questions on this item? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-588.
Second.
There's a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-589, concerns some change rates passing through. Tyler?
So the electric department has some rates that we maintain, rate 41, rate 43, and rate 45. Those are all rates that are Duke match rates. So if you look at the territorial map for the city of High Point, there's a large concentrated area where Duke and the city both exist. We utilize these rates where there's territorial issues. That's called a customer choice area. So if you buy a vacant plot of land and both utilities are there, you can choose which one. Now, once it's hooked up, you're on it. It's not like your internet where if you don't like Spectrum, you can get North State. If you don't like North State, you get AT&T. But Duke recently, this summer, changed their rate riders for their OVT, LGS, and their industrial rates. So we are doing the same accordingly so that those rates match penny for penny.
Okay. I might have a hard time with this one being a Duke customer, but anyway. If there's no comments or further,
Tyler, how many areas in the city would be affected by this?
Well, these will be customers that are currently utilizing those
Okay,
rates.
okay.
So like with rate 43, I think we only have 5 customers in that rate class. And in rate 45, I think there's only 3 customers in there. But on rate 41, there are a couple hundred customers that are commercial, on that commercial rate.
Okay.
So it will affect those, but hopefully in the spring, we're going to do what we did with the residential rate. You know, we took those 6 residential rates we all had that were a
Right.
fraction of a penny away from
Yeah.
each other and combined it into
Yeah.
one. And we haven't really heard any negative feedback from that. So we hope to do the same in the spring with our commercial industrial rates as well.
Thank you.
anything else? Then I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-589.
Second.
There's a second. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Tyler. Next item is 2022-590. We'll hear from our Managing Director, Jerron Hollis, concerning the One High Point Commission request.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council. What you have in front of you, I'm Jerron Hollis, Managing Director of Communications Public Engagement. What you have in front of you is an item that requests two things. It's a budget amendment for a proposed budget from the One High Point Commission that came as a result of their December 1st meeting, where they came up with a list of recommendations that totaled $45,000. There's a breakdown of those items that are included as an attachment. There's also a component of this request that seeks to extend the deadline for the One High Point Commission to make their presentation to council. By the current resolution, the current deadline would expire June 2nd of 2023. The deadline on the request would extend that about 6 months to the January 17th, 2024 council meeting. This is an item that, well, both these items have come as a result of meeting and discussion in efforts to try to fulfill the original resolution that council passed to bring forth recommendations regarding the reparations and One High Point Commission discussions. So the staff request here is that council approve the budget amendment for $45,000 and approves the commission's request to extend that date for the presentation of recommendations. Be glad to entertain any questions that you have.
Anyone have comments or questions? If we extend the date to requested, we will, the current council that approved the resolution will not be intact at that point for the report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any further comments or questions?
I have a couple comments. So I know that this is a controversial topic. I mean, it just is. And so you just have to kind of be honest and be willing to have some discussions. Just recently, and I was kind of naive, and I made a comment in a leadership luncheon that Michael Holmes and I was in, and I had gotten really excited. I met with Zaki a couple of weeks ago, and if anyone knows, Zaki owns the Oriental Rug Company. He's done very, very well, and he's very philanthropic. He's donated his properties in High Point to a Pakistani nonprofit, and so when I met with him, you know, he told me, he said that the nonprofit in Pakistan helps do free interest microloans to get people out of the cycle of poverty. And their success rate is 100%. And I said, oh my gosh, how do you get to 100%? And he said, because they give very small microloans and really help them achieve that next tier, and then they can continue. And I Googled that nonprofit. I don't know how to spell it. It's kind of difficult, but anyway, I'm happy to send it to anyone if they want it. But it was really, really amazing what I learned. It's a Harvard graduate that started the program, and it's just amazing. And so at this leadership luncheon, I kind of mentioned that, and Michael Holmes was like, and I'm naive, and I admit that I was a little bit dumb, and he said, it's in the One High Point. So I think that there's so much more deep in the work that the commission is planning on doing, and I think we're all so caught up on the word reparations. And I really hope and pray for our city and our community that we realize and we look at some of these aspects, and what we're doing is we're taking folks that may, and I hope I don't say some wrong words, but kind of drain the system into tax-paying citizens that are, you know, enjoying a quality of life, contributing to community and society, and getting and breaking that cycle of poverty. And that's what I see in this, is that it's going to take It's going to take research, and so I really hope that we can get to a unanimous understanding that this is something that could really help us in the poverty gap in some area. I represent 27260. It's one of the poorest census tracts in North Carolina. And I would love to see, Fairview Elementary, some of the schools and some of the things that are happening in that particular area, but I know over in the southeast too, are steps to kind of change that. And if we can have the research behind some other initiatives, which it like free interest microloans, I think that we can really make a difference in our community for generations to come. So that's what I'd like to.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We had a chance to go through some very informative trainings and sessions at the National League of Cities. And one of the sessions that I had the pleasure of attending was that cities are taking a deliberate effort to close the racial wealth gap. And not just from the sense of a social benefit, but from an economic benefit for the city. They're actually doing studies of the return on investments of policies much like are contained in the one High Point, and they're doing a economic study on the return of these investments. And none of these things are reparations in the sense of a federal transfer of payments. These are all targeted policies to undo policies that have had a disparate negative effect. And so I know we hear the word reparations and we hear the word, we have this visceral reaction to it, but just so that if anyone's listening, that is not what we're doing here. You can't fix that. You can't fix generations of that with a small transfer of payment. The city's financial wherewithal, no matter what we did, it's not going to move anybody out of poverty. We have to have systemic change. We have to have policies to correct policies. And this is what we're doing here. Improving transportation, improving homeownership, looking at ways to incentivize entrepreneurship. These are all policies that the city can participate in that will have a life-changing effect and a directional change of the city. So it's going to take research. It's going to take strength. It's going to take courage. It's going to take will. And it's going to take an open mind. So cities 100 times the size of High Point, Dallas, Albuquerque, are all doing exactly the same thing. And they're committing resources to make sure that the citizens that are suffering the worst in their city get some attention, because even though they may not pay as much taxes, they still are contributors to our city, and they're taxpayers as well. And they deserve to have their voices heard. They deserve to have their issues adjudicated. And, when I go to church on Sunday, there's something I always lean to, and it says that what you do to the least of these, you also do to me. So I live by that. And so we can't be a great city if people who are struggling don't get any attention at all. So I hope we can all take that to heart as we find the courage to do bold things for those who are the least of our citizens in our city.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
I have one more question.
Sure.
And I hope I don't catch you off guard, but
No.
just for a aha moment for those of, may still have doubt, can you think of just a kind of simple, specific policy that was written that really did hold some back, just so that people can say,
Yeah,
oh.
so transportation. Say, for instance, if we look at where the majority of high-paying new jobs are in the city, say, for instance, they're in North High Point. Right now, we don't have bus service that runs to North High Point. If you live in 27260 and you are underemployed and you don't have proper transportation, the access to a job that could be, 2 or 3 times what you're earning right now is limited. So by expanding transportation routes, you give people access to a greater earning potential. And so if you live in an area where you're underemployed and you don't make a lot of money, being able to get to a job to improve your economic outlook is huge. And so those are policies that cities are looking at. They're looking at the number of routes. They're looking at the time routes are running. They're working with local businesses to create transportation co-ops to be able to get people back and forth based around shifts. Those are all things that cities are doing to make a difference for underserved communities. And so it's policies like that that can change the direction of someone's life. If you are making, $9 an hour and you all of a sudden are making $18 an hour, your life is completely different than it was the day before. So we just want to make sure that we have access to that. And we're looking at a labor force right now that we're struggling to find people. And if someone is out of the labor force because they don't have reliable transportation to work, that not only impacts that person, but it also limits the ability of that business to perform at their highest and create market share and value for their customers. So it's a win-win scenario for the business community and for those who are suffering in our public.
Okay. Can I ask another question?
Of course.
Sure. Okay, so some may argue that public transportation is very underutilized. Is the commission also maybe looking at, and I know we talked about this in our retreat, so that you may not necessarily have to live in 27260?
No.
Because if we provide more mixed income housing through policy
Certainly.
in some of the areas where the wealthier jobs are,
Certainly.
that's another way.
Certainly.
So those are all the different
Yeah,
ways that are
so
going.
housing, transportation, the access to better health care, all these things, it doesn't, we oftentimes think that these things are contained to our poorest census tracts and fixing things there, but also giving people mobility, economic mobility, is also a solution that that cities are looking at as well. So it's a broad range of things that can be done, but it does take research on how to get these things done. Cities have done these things in singular groups, but in terms of having a broad, full policy prescription for this, it's not been done a lot. So this is a very bold idea that we're doing here. It's a very bold undertaking, and it's going to be tough. But great cities have great will, and you try to do great things. And so I hope the public can understand what this is really trying to accomplish and what it really means to citizens in our city and what it could mean for our city as a leader in the nation. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are.
And I'm so sorry, Chair, may I ask one more question? So that, so then I'm thinking, and I know that this is huge around the nation, probably worldwide, is dispersing concentrations of poverty. Also, from public safety, I would think, and I'm sure this is something that would be researched, how that would help our safety issues if we are dispersing the concentrations of poverty, and what a load that would take off of our crime.
Yeah, so if you look at where crime proliferates, it's generally in high poverty areas.
Yeah.
And so the higher the income or the more dispersed the income is, it's the crime is less. I live in 27265. We don't hear a lot of that. I mean, there's some, obviously, but we don't hear about the types of violent crime. We don't hear about the trafficking. We don't hear about some of those things. I'm not saying that they're not happening, but in terms of the day-to-day proliferation of it, it's not happening. Why? We're a higher income census tract. And so that's just a fact. Economics play a part in dispersing crime. And so as we improve these areas, and if we think about economics overall, if we get to a point where 27265 and those areas are maxed out, economic activity will leave the city, because if the other areas can't handle it or they're not amenable to development, they're going to go somewhere else. And so I don't want to tell a developer that there's a bad place to develop in High Point.
Anything else? I thank each of you for your comments. It opened up some ideas, and as you said, it's a broad thing and it's a deep subject. But I think, open minds to a point of decision are important. In the case of this, I would like to consider and make a motion to have the entire city council hear item 2022-590, and that it not be on the consent agenda for Monday night. Is there a second?
If there's a second, then can I still make a comment?
Sure.
Or should I make the comment before there's a second? Or can I second and then comment? Okay, I second that it not be on the consent agenda item, because I think it's fair for all the council members to be able to speak, but I do want it to go through as a favorable recommendation from finance.
Does it not have to have unanimous consent to go through as a favorable? I mean, we're taking it out of the agenda.
Yeah, I think the motion that Britt made was for it to not be on consent, but he didn't
Correct.
say to approve. So it wouldn't have any recommendation, it would just.
Okay,
It goes
then can I take my second away then? Because I don't want it to just, if we can't, I want to say in favor, because if we made that go to a vote, I'm pretty sure it would go in favor of. So then I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, you can withdraw your second. So
Yeah.
then there's a motion for it to, the motion that Britt made, was for it to go forward with no recommendation in either direction and to just be.
So full council can hear it and discuss.
So is there a second for the chairman's motion? That motion.
So that motion fails for a second. Is there another motion to be heard?
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 2022-590.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is a no. That motion will go forward with a 2-to-1 vote, where full council will hear it and discuss it on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Next item, 2022-596, is a professional services agreement concerning the Mercer Group.
Chairman Moore, I'll take that one.
Okay, thank you.
For the public listening, this is Tasha Logan Ford, City Manager for the City of High Point. The item before you is a professional services agreement with the Mercer Group. This is a firm that would handle the executive search process for the hiring of a new city attorney. With the retirement of our current city attorney, council indicated that they wanted to have a consultant work with the group on this process. Staff would recommend that we approve the contract before you. It is for $19,500 to conduct the services. There's also incidentals and travel that are associated with this agreement that are estimated around $5,400. The time frame that the consultant anticipates this process would take is about 90 days. So we're looking at about a 3-month process. And then we would be prepared to begin once the contract is executed. So staff recommendation would be that council approve the contract for services and allow the appropriate city staff member to sign the agreement.
Comments or questions for the manager? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve item 2022-596. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes, and I don't see anything else on today's agenda. If anybody else in the audience or up here have comments or things for finance? Okay, hearing none, I will make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We're adjourned.
Aye.